Hey VUFM, this is Richa, and we are on episode number 3.
And
you are Lucy.
Oh, and I'm Lucy.
Yes.
We forgot our own intro. And last time we talked a lot about strength training, exercise calories. We went really technical, actually.
Yes.
And I just wanted to correct something that we said in our last episode. In our last episode, I said I was reading a book, and it said something along the lines of 1 pound of muscle at rest burns about 50 calories per day. And I thought that sounded really high, so I went back and fact-checked it. And it turns out that number is not correct for most people. For most people, 1 pound of muscle at rest only burns about 6 to 10 calories per day. And the point still stands that this is still a lot higher than 1 pound of fat would burn at rest per day, which is more like 1 or 2 calories. So over time, obviously, if you have a lot of muscle, it does add up over time. But it's not like 50 times greater than fat.
Yes, yes. Yeah, glad you fact-checked that.
Yes, always fact-check things. If something doesn't make sense to you.
Yes. Awesome. You have another one queued up, or should I look one up?
I do. There was just one thing that last time I was on the verge of talking about, which is that a lot of people think that when they are dieting or when they're trying to lose fat, they're not eating a lot of food, that in order to make it even faster and more effective, they should exercise lots and lots and lots. Strength training or cardio doesn't matter. Like, they just ramp up the exercise. And actually, what you need to know is that your body gets stronger, and also your body gets stronger during recovery. And if you don't give it time to recover, even if you don't care about getting stronger, if you don't give your body enough time to recover after you've beaten it down with all the exercise, it's going to start conserving as much energy as possible. It's going to go into hyper safety mode, which means storing more fat, expending less fat, revving down your energy and your metabolism, because it wants to save as much energy as possible, because it doesn't know when it's going to get whacked in the face again, right? If you give it time to actually recover, it won't be in that high alert, high stress mode. So what I've learned over years of tracking to see how my body responds to things is I learned that when I am not eating a lot of calories because I want to lose fat, for instance, I actually tone down my exercise. Mm-hmm. I don't increase it. I still exercise regularly, maybe twice a week or so, but it's not very intense exercise. It's enough that I'm maintaining my muscle mass and still, feeling physically healthy, but I'm giving my body ample time to rest because I'm not giving it a lot of calories to begin with. Yeah. So I don't want my body to burn fat, but I don't want it to start conserving all the energy and stuff. And if your body goes into high alert, high stress energy conservation mode, your workouts output is just going to decrease eventually. You're not going to be able to run as fast, you're not going to be able to lift as much, and what are you in the gym for an hour for at that point?
Yeah, I feel like as human beings we have a hard time standing still, aka actually giving time for recovery.
Yeah.
I myself, so I had this trend going on, which it's the longest I've gone without regressing, is I would injure myself every 2 to 3 months. And the reason was I would not give myself enough recovery. And part of it was intentional and part of it was unintentional, because I didn't realize, as we talked about in our first episode, that I was long-limbed. So I was not resting enough between sets. But beyond that, I wasn't actually taking the time to do any kind of mobility exercise. And if you don't do any kind of mobility exercise and you're doing a lot of intense stuff suddenly, if you're not in your early 20s or mid-20s, it's going to take a toll on you.
That is a really good point to call out. What you can do when you're younger is not necessarily going to be the same as what you can do when you're older.
Yeah. And when I started with, I used to have a personal trainer, and he used to be I think at the time I thought he was making me feel good. But I think honestly he was surprised that I did not do, I would go without even working out, right, for a week or 2 weeks, and I'd come back and I'd up all my weights and make progress, and he'd be like, how old are you again? And I'd be 24, and then so he's well, and then he would be well, when you get to 30, it's not going to happen anymore, is what he would say, and I was oh, you're just making me feel good or something. But now I know it's serious. Like, the amount of recovery you need goes up. The amount of, even how much stress you can put on your body, like, goes down without you hurting yourself.
With one caveat, it can go better as well if during the time between your 20s and your 30s you are taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily have to get worse, right? But a lot of times what happens is people like do exercise or diet or whatever in their 20s and things go well, and then they stop, they let themselves go, and then they come back in their 30s and try the same thing, and then it doesn't go over well. That's because your body follows that. If you're not actively working on it, it declines.
Yes.
That's just how it works, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So you really, I take it from me who didn't do this, but really optimize for your recovery. Like, make sure you're taking enough rest between sets. Make sure you're actually doing some kind of stretching afterwards, or warm up, or at least just go for a walk. So that's really important. And as Lucy said, all the muscle building happens while you're sleeping most of the time. Well, not all of it, but like most of it while you're not doing anything.
Yeah, your body is in recovery mode while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
On that note, yesterday Richa led this really great workshop on cravings, and a huge part of it talks about sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if it was a huge part. It was a huge part for me, though, because I know that
it stood out to you.
It stood out to me. That was the part I've been battling with. And I don't know if you... we will probably hold this workshop again, so we can include a link for it for the next one. But it really goes over a lot of like what actually is the science and psychology that causes cravings. Sleep is one of the big parts of it. When you're not sleeping enough, you also have the cravings. So not only are you not getting the exercise output that you need to actually make progress, you're also getting more hungry as well, or you're feeling more hungry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sleep, and I want to circle back again to the point where I think we have a few clients who are exercising a lot, and on the days that they exercise, they are way more hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at where they're at, it's like they don't have to do that much exercise to make progress.
Yeah.
So they're usually surprised when we tell them, yeah, you can actually reduce how much exercise you're doing. Because I think most coaches are always telling you to do more exercise.
Yeah.
When it's not necessary all the time.
Yeah.
Which actually brings me to another thing I wanted to talk about from last time, because we talked about how you need to dig into, like when you go through these studies, especially when they're said on news websites, they'd be like, oh, this study says that you don't need to do 3 sets of, whatever exercise. All you have to do is do 1 set really slowly.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, and people would be like, oh, okay, so I just need to do that, right?
Right.
And there's this concept, which I guess we have names for now. I didn't know it existed. It was just reasoning by analogy and reasoning by first principles, right? And I think the danger happens when you are mostly reasoning by analogy, because, like, first of all, everyone starts off looking at the world around them, and from that learning what they need to do, right? But if you're one of those people who are just looking at the surface level thing, which is like, this person did this, so I'm just going to go do that, without like actually trying to boil down the components to like, what is really the factor that made this work? And how come this other thing, which looks very different, also works?
Yeah.
What is the common thing between that? If you don't ask those questions, you're always going to be just switching between this workout and that workout and this diet and that diet. So, for example, one question we had asked in the last one was like, okay, so maybe the time under tension cumulatively matches up, because the other one you're doing really fast, right? And maybe if you take the time under tension for that and then add it up, and then you take the time under
subtract
tension,
the rest times.
subtract the rest times. Yeah, subtract. It's not your total gym time; it's your time under tension, right? And you just compare that to doing it very slowly for 1 set. Maybe it just is like about the same, and that's why you were able to make the same amount of progress, right?
Yeah, the people who do the time under tension stuff, they will argue that the rest time actually hurts you or something because your muscles recover in between, and that's hurt. Anyway, people will always have like little also like things to say with regards to any with regards to anything. There's always a but this that can come after it, and I guess there's a point where you have to also just ask, is this it doesn't matter really in practice.
Exactly. Yeah. How significant it is.
Yeah. So it's like understanding why things are right. Why people say the things they do, because most of the time what you see in research studies, they aren't lies.
Yes.
But they don't tell the
full story.
It's the interpretation that changes things. Yeah, exactly. The data is not lies.
Yes.
We hope. I'm pretty sure the data is not a lie. It's the interpretation of the data that can make you go completely down one path or down the other path. But yeah, so there's one which is making sense of the data and figuring out what are the principles that make that happen. And then the other part is when you're actually putting things into practice is asking, does this matter? How much of a difference does it make?
Yes, because we have a tendency of saying like, oh, this is better, but like, yeah, how much better? Like, people are like, oh, if you drink cold water, it ups your metabolism. It's like, yeah, but by how much?
Yeah.
Like, it turns out it's not like as significant as if you started like strength training or sleeping enough.
Yeah.
Like that pushes your metabolism way more, but we tend to give the same amount of weight to all the factors just because someone said, oh, it is better.
Yes. Better does not mean, I don't know. Better doesn't mean like a tons better.
Yeah. Like better, but then like offsetted by the amount of work that you have to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Like, is it worth it? So yeah, I wanted to touch upon that point where when you look at these studies, like don't just be like, oh, this is what the study is doing. Like I would say, ask questions on like, okay, the study is saying this, but there are also other studies that say the opposite. It's not possible that that all of like basically you're discarding 90% of what you've heard so far.
This I hear this in the diet industry a lot, which is that there's so much us versus them kind of thing, like
because that's how marketing works.
That is how marketing works. No, and I mean I understand that you have to sometimes you have to do a little us versus them, but it's like calling like if you're not into keto if you're doing something and you're anti-keto and calling all of keto to be myth and junk and science, and if you guys probably know that Richa and we're not really big into keto, but we don't think it's
it's not junk.
Blasphemy. Like we don't think that anybody who has ever done research on keto are just liars.
Yes.
Because they're not. I mean, the data is the data. Like you have to accept the truth for what it is, but it's your interpretation.
Yeah.
So anyway, I
think you have to take I think you have to take the data, but then also connect it to all of the other data that you have, right? Yep. Like it's sort of like there are studies that say like, oh, these two groups of people did this workout versus that workout, and the people who did the more harder workouts gained less muscle or something like that.
Yeah.
I think you were telling me one of those studies, and my first question was like, how much were they eating? And how much were they resting?
Yeah.
Right? Of course, that's not something that, some magazine that is reporting on this is going to talk about.
Yeah.
Right? But that's like, and then, Lucy was like, I don't think they were doing anything different. They were doing exactly the same nutrition and exactly the same rest. And they only changed the variable, which was the workout. And I was like, well, duh.
Yeah.
We're never going to quote someone who's, doing the more intense exercise and tell them you should eat exactly like the people who are doing the lesson. Like, that makes no sense. In real world, that's never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
With any sane coach. So like you have to ask more questions on like, how is it possible that this is happening when I've heard exactly the opposite from her somewhere else? And usually the answer is you're not seeing the full picture. You need to ask more questions and see like what other variables there are. And then again, how much do those variables affect in reality? How much of a progress are you actually going to make?
I actually had a topic that I wanted to talk about, which kind of is related. Mm-hmm. Shall I go?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's about the concept of a calorie is not just a calorie, right? And I think, you guys let me know if I'm wrong about this, but I think what people mean when they say that is like eating 100 calories of vegetables is not the same as eating 100 calories of potato chips.
Right.
And not just from a vegetables have more nutrient perspective. But first of all, they're different, but not because of calories. The calories isn't what makes the difference. It's eating 100 calories worth of vegetables is different because vegetables have a lot of nutrients for those 100 calories, and a bag of chips has very little nutrients. So that's one. But other people also claim that studies have shown that if you eat just carbs, empty calories, carbs, you store more fat than if you eat non-empty calories like vegetables and maybe high protein stuff. And so people argue using those studies that says that, hey, if you eat 100, the same calories of just empty calories, you store more, right? People argue that means calories doesn't matter. But what they're not, but what you're seeing is, once again, a slice of the picture. The bigger picture is that it's not just the calories that it's not just about the calories that you eat. It's about the calories that you expend as well. When you are eating calories, when you are eating food that has higher nutrients, it takes a longer time to digest. Because your body needs to do stuff to those nutrients. It's got to like partition the vitamins and the protein and the whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that energy comes, that's your energy burnt.
Yeah.
It's also called TEF, thermic effect of food, if you want to be really sciencey about it. So if you eat like the same person eating a high protein, high nutrient, 1,500 calorie diet will store less fat than the person who eats a high carb, high sugar, high fat, processed food diet, because their body isn't expending as much energy to work on those foods. So it doesn't mean calories don't matter.
Yeah.
So both camps are right. Calories still mattered in the end. Yeah. And eating vegetables is different than eating empty carbs in terms of how likely your body is to store fat. Guess what? They're both right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's like the thermic effect of, the digestion thing, but then there's also like how your body reacts afterwards, right? Like in terms of your cravings. And like, as you said, you get hungry quicker, right? And then, it has other domino effect on other parts of your life, which is what also makes vegetables a better overall choice than chips.
I was just talking purely from a fat storing,
I see.
Calories in, calories out perspective. But you are absolutely right. Just for general health, and I feel like nobody is arguing this.
Yes,
but vegetables are better in terms of health than potato chips. I hope that if you're listening to this is not even an argument right now.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Cool. Did you have another topic? Okay, so one of the things, I think this is one of the things that you brought up. Which
I rant to Richa a lot throughout the week.
Yeah. Yeah, it was this concept of shepherding your money. So not seeing as the owner of your money, but shepherding your money.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Back up a little bit. I've been reading a book about finances and developing a abundant money mindset. So that's why we're talking about money now.
Yes.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, and the reason it's kind of related to the health and fitness thing and beyond is if you're looking at yourself as shepherding your money, there's essentially two ways to support the things and people around you, right? There's your time and there's your money. That's pretty much it, right? And when you're a shepherd and you look at it that way, you can be like, hey, every time I buy this potato chip or every time I buy this thing that I don't believe the food industry should be getting us addicted to, right? I am basically supporting this industry. And not in terms of like, I think there's two ways to look at this. It's like, it's everywhere. I have to buy this. I'm addicted to it. This is a bad thing. Or the other way is like, I am actually supporting this right now, even though I say that I don't want to support it. But, it finally comes down to action. It's time or money. Those are the ways you show what you actually stand for. And you're supporting it in that way. So I thought that was a really interesting concept when you're making your food choices and your workout choices and who you choose to support.
Yeah, you vote with your dollars.
Yeah.
I mean, you vote with your time too.
Yes.
Time, and then they say time is money. So I guess it all comes back to you vote with your dollars. If you want to be very math, make an equation out of this.
Yes.
And you didn't explicitly say this, but you brought up an example of buying potato chips and then, being angry about it. Mm-hmm. Like, if I buy this potato chips, I am supporting, this food industry or whatever. Or it doesn't have to be chips; it can be whatever, right?
Yeah.
And what we found is that if you make food decisions from a place of not passion, in anger, like I don't know if that's the right word, but as opposed to a place of sadness, which is usually what most people default into. When most people want to buy a donut, they think, I really shouldn't. I feel ashamed.
Yeah.
And when you feel, what happens when you feel sad, right? When you feel like sadness encourages comfort.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons we have the sadness emotion, is so that other people can come and comfort us. And if other people aren't there, then we are going to invent our own ways to comfort ourselves. So the more sad you are about, I can't have this donut, the more a part of you is going to be like, but honey, you deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you come from kind of a place of more like righteous anger, which is like, the marketing, the food company, the donut company is trying to convince me that sugar is good for me, and product placement and all that stuff, and I don't want to support this. Now you're taking a stand. You have this like higher level kind of purpose thing going on, and that in itself is internal motivation right there.
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah. Yeah, and I really liked this concept because I think it really changes how you're going to behave in a long-term manner, right? Once you internalize this and once you make it part of your identity, versus like struggling every time to like have willpower to not buy this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Identity always, it's stronger. It lasts longer.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And we see this with a lot of, I think, the diets out there, right? I think people are so passionate about them because it's their identity.
Yeah. How come? If you're a vegan, how come it's so easy for you not to resist burgers, but so hard for somebody else who wants to lose weight, and that's their only reason to not eat fatty foods, to resist burgers, right? If you are a paleo person, how come it's so easy? I'm not saying it's easy for everybody, but it's easier for somebody who identifies as paleo. I'm going to eat what caveman people eat. I am a caveman person. It's easier for them to not eat carbs than for somebody else who just wants to cut calories to not eat carbs, because that's a part of their identity.
Yes, and I think which is why I think the whole, which is interesting because it makes the whole more balanced approach almost harder. Because the balanced approach is not an identity.
Yeah. Unless you make it.
Unless you make it an identity. I'm a balanced person.
I am a balanced person. Yeah. I think that, that's not sexy to a lot of people.
It isn't. Yeah.
I think it's sexy though.
Yeah. I think it's very sexy.
You can balance, well-rounded.
Yeah, exactly. I'm an all-rounded, well-balanced person.
Yeah. Then it's like, then if you eat too much sugar, you're like, is this something a well-balanced person would do? No, they would balance it out with some other nutritious stuff. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And I guess we have not succeeded at making that as much of an identity, maybe because it requires moderation, while everything else just requires being very black and white.
Black and white is easier to do. That is true.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to kind of talk about what we said about sadness when your most felt emotion is sadness, like when you're making a food decision and you feel sorry for yourself because you can't have a donut, or first of all, nobody's actually telling you can't have that donut, right? You're putting that thought into your own head, unless literally your mom's like taking donuts away from you, which I'm assuming that's not you, but I think when you express that kind of sadness and self-pitying in public as well, what that also encourages is the people around you to start coming to your aid. And the only way most people know how to come to somebody's aid is to indulge them. So if you are in public and you say, I shouldn't have that donut, I'm trying to lose weight, and the tone really matters, right? If you're like, I would, but I'm trying to lose weight, I don't want to eat it. You know what people are going to do, right? They're going to start pushing food on you, because what they hear is not, this person wants to lose weight. What they hear is, you're sad. I don't want you to be sad. You're my friend. I want you to be happy. Not having a cookie is making you sad? Well, then giving you a cookie will make you happy. I'm going to say, hey, don't worry, you deserve it. You had a hard day today. Eat as much cookies as you want. Get a beer. That's what people do, right?
Yeah.
And that's great. and that people want to make you feel good, but they're putting it on the wrong thing. I mean, they could be right. Maybe you do need a cookie, right? From what we've seen when we work with our clients, that's not really what makes them truly happy at the end of the day. As a matter of fact, if they didn't want that cookie, but then was talked into eating that cookie anyway, and it's not 100%, like, they're not blameless in that situation, if they did the woe is me kind of thing. They actually end up feeling worse, not better. So I guess this is a message to both sides, honestly. If you also see somebody who is... this is a tough topic, right? Because you don't want to shame people. As a matter of fact, I mean, I think you should never shame people. That doesn't help anybody. But, if you see somebody who is on a diet and for whatever reason, right, I don't believe that it helps anybody to say, oh, you don't need to lose weight. You're fine the way you are. It doesn't mean that's not true. It may be perfectly true they don't need to lose weight. It may be perfectly true they're fine the way they are. They probably are fine the way they are. But that's not it's not your job to tell them what their goals should be.
Right.
If they are a functioning adult person.
Yes.
And presumably not, like, having an eating disorder, which only, like, very few percent. But, like, what you can do, and what I would do, and what I do is ask them, or first of all, either I just say, okay, cool, I respect what you want to do, or I ask them a question, like, oh, why are you trying to, like, why are you trying to lose weight, or, like, how's it been going so far? And you know what, like, asking questions gets people to, tell you more, because what if they're not losing weight, not trying to lose weight because they hate their bodies, which is what a lot of people think. They think that if you're trying to lose weight, then that means you hate yourself. Yeah. What if that's not the reason? What if the reason they're trying to lose weight is because their doctors told them that they need, or maybe they're not even trying to lose weight. What if they're trying to avoid cookies because their doctors told them they're pre-diabetic and they don't want to be pre-diabetic anymore? What if they do want to lose weight, but the reason is because they are trying to keep up with their kids and they're, like, running out of energy? Like, what if it's all these other reasons that have nothing to do with how you feel about yourself? You don't know. Yeah. Unless you ask.
Yeah, as you said, I think the reassuring gesture tends to be more, when I have reassured someone on something, it tends to be more about me trying to feel better about, like, basically feel like, make the situation happy again, right? It's more about me and less about them, right? It's not really about their goals. It's more like, I feel uncomfortable that you're sad around me right now. I want to feel comfortable. So let me remove the sadness from you. It has nothing to do with what you actually said.
Yes. That's true, and I think that's, like, very human.
It's a very human thing to do, and it's a very quick reaction. If you're someone with any kind of empathy, right? Or even sympathy in this case, like, it's a very quick reaction. It's your default go-to.
We had, like, this conversation. We had, like, this dinner with some friends the other day, and there was this one person, and they just talked on and on and on and on about something that was really technical. So it kind of went over our heads a little bit, and then afterwards he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've been talking too much or whatever." And then both Richa and I were like, "Oh no, that's okay." But then, like, afterwards, we're like, "Why did we say that?"
Exactly,
because we agreed that this person was going on and on
too long.
And and so it's like, it's very human to do. It's like, if we see, if you as a human see another human and they feel bad about themselves, you want to just make them feel better by whatever means necessary, because otherwise you also feel uncomfortable.
Yes, absolutely. There's a part of me that questions, like, why does everyone assume that if someone is not eating a cookie, it has to be because they hate themselves? Because in this case, in the case where the person was talking too much, that is black and white. Yes, you were talking too much. It's not because you hate yourself. Maybe the opposite. Right? But, like, I don't understand why people jump to the conclusion that this person must be hating themselves, and I should feed them this cookie that they're trying to not to eat.
So, I have a guess. And partly because I was somebody who dieted for a very long time because I hated myself. And by long time, I mean years. Like most of my teenage life and part of my adult life, right? And I do think that you have a tendency to project onto other people what you've been through. So I've dieted because I hated myself. Mm-hmm. I've also dieted because I wanted to feel better. I also dieted for a lot of great reasons.
Right.
But because I have dieted when I've hated myself as well, like as soon as I got out of that mindset, there was a time where I saw everybody else diet. Anybody who I see diet, I would automatically assume, like just off the top of my head, jump to the conclusion that they must also hate themselves too, because I hated myself when I'm dieting.
Right.
Now that I spent a few years, both like eating less calories and eating more calories, for various reasons, I now have there's a lot more reasons now that I'm even aware of why somebody would diet. It's not always just to look good. Sometimes it is just to look good, but you can do it without hating like I have so many reasons now that when I see somebody diet, I don't jump to any conclusion anymore because I'm like, well, there's 15 different reasons.
Yeah.
Whereas before, in my own mental toolbox, there was only one reason, and it was the one that I've known.
I see.
So,
what about the people who are not trying to lose weight, though? Because there are also people who are not trying to lose weight, and they're fine with it. But then, like the podcast that you were listening to, where a person is trying to fight it with love, which is basically you should eat the cookie.
I don't know if in the past she has this, though. I don't know her history. Probably, what if because I don't need to lose weight, but, I've had a history. So it's possible she didn't need to lose weight, but she's had a history of wanting to lose weight because she hates herself. I will say that, and I think it's good to be aware of this. I think in the first podcast we talked a lot about the gender thing, how like a different fitness stuff targeted towards women have a very different tone than fitness stuff targeting towards men. It really wasn't, to be honest, until I started moving away from the stuff targeting towards women and started reading more about the stuff targeting towards men that I realized there were so many other different ways to lose weight. Because for whatever reason, it does feel like a lot of the fitness podcasts, not all, but a lot of the ones targeted towards women are about building confidence and feeling good about yourself, implying that if you are not fit, whatever that means to you, you must be feeling bad about yourself. Whereas the other podcasts are more about you're trying to develop this. You're just trying to get better, right?
Yeah.
You might be fine where you are right now, but hey, let's just get better, right? And as soon as I switch focus from fixing myself to I'm already good, I just want to get even better, just like in literally every other area of my life, like when you can be a really good teacher but still want to get better at teaching, right? Like I started treating it like that. It felt completely different, and I'm just wondering if it's just a like this isn't necessarily a mindset that everybody knows about. Yeah. Because I know you listen to all sorts of things. From every audience that aren't targeting towards you. Yeah. You will listen to podcasts, read blogs, read books from written by anybody. Yeah. They don't have to look like you or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll give anyone a shot.
You'll give anyone a shot. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if they're written by a 20-year-old or a 50-year-old either. It's like it doesn't matter. They don't have to look like you, right? Yeah. And I feel like that's such a good thing to do because then you get a wider perspective of everybody.
In fact, I do the opposite, where if the person, it looks like someone I've not heard from before, I will especially give them a shot.
Yeah.
Because they usually have a way of thinking that I've not heard of before.
That's I think exactly the point, is that if all you've heard is people diet because they don't feel good about themselves. Yeah. Then that's what you're going to believe. Yeah. I mean, you're not exposed to other thoughts. Like, how would you know? Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, and I don't want to downplay this either, because I do know a lot of women do lose weight because they want to feel better about themselves. I don't know what the percentage of that is. I imagine the percentage is quite sizable. Otherwise, this wouldn't be such a big deal. Yeah. Almost every... I don't know. I don't want to put a percentage on this, but I think that most women that I know who have tried to lose weight at some point felt bad about themselves because of their weight. Yeah. it doesn't necessarily mean it makes up their entire life.
Yeah. I think, there's a quote by Jim Carrey, and it's on money, but I think it could be applied to weight loss. And the quote from Jim Carrey is, I hope everyone gets to be rich so that they can figure out that money is not what finally fixes all your problems.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing could be said by weight loss. Like, you can look at people who are, who don't need to lose weight or are not trying to lose weight, and they don't necessarily have very happy lives.
They don't. They don't. We already talked about, I think, in the previous 2 episodes, that just because you're skinny doesn't mean you're healthy.
Yeah.
But another one, just because you're skinny, it doesn't mean you're happy with the way you look.
Yes.
Either.
Yes.
I will. And I think this applies to men and women.
Yes.
Like, no look will make you happy.
Yes.
In the long run, honestly.
So that's not to say you can never be happy.
Yes. Sorry.
That is not the point of what Lucy's saying. The point is, happiness is an adjacent thing to all of these goals, right? Like if you listen to Simon Sinek, the guy who talks about finding your why, right? He talks a lot about having infinite goals and having finite goals. And, for the longest time, I didn't realize I was one of those people who didn't have an infinite goal. And, happiness comes, I believe him on this, from having an infinite goal. A goal that is not like, I'm going to go accomplish this, and then I'm going to be happy, right? That's a finite goal. And if you're always chasing that goal, you're going to go into depression, and you're going to be very sad after you accomplish that goal. And he gives a lot of examples, like, for example, Michael Phelps, right? Like, he at a very young age, because he's an athlete, he won all these medals and everything, and then he kind of went into a depression and spiraled because he didn't know what to do with his life anymore.
Yeah.
And he's like, he has everything. He has fame, he has Olympic gold medals, he has an amazing body, like, literally everything.
At the end of the day, you are yourself, though.
Yeah.
No amount of outside things can replace you.
Yeah.
Right? You see this with celebrities, too.
Yeah.
Like, you have fame, you have lots of people.
It looks like
knows
every finite goal has been met.
Every finite goal has been met. Yes. Yeah.
But the infinite goal is something different altogether.
Yeah, it's a really good talk. I highly recommend.
Yes.
If you Google Simon Sinek, Sinek, and infinite goals, you'll find.
Yeah. He calls it the infinite game. He has a book on it. I think you bought the book. I think it's basically his talks. Right?
Yeah, I got it from the library, but his book is basically a conglomeration of all of his talks, so you can also just watch all of his talks.
Watch all of his talks. Yeah. He's an excellent speaker.
One of my favorite speakers.
Yeah. He speaks so well.
Yeah.
He doesn't tell you any of the how, but true to his brand, he's on brand where he gives you all of the whys, but none of the hows.
Yes. I think in one episode he was even like, I don't know the how. And that's not what I do. And I'm like, good for you for being honest about what you do.
I'm all about the inspiration.
Yeah.
And then go find a coach to figure it out.
That's right. I was thinking of this other quote that once again relates to money, which is that money only makes you money makes you happier if you are already a happy person.
Yes.
Money makes you angrier if you are already an angry person. Money makes, insert whatever.
It's an accelerator.
It accelerates stuff.
Yeah.
And I believe that looks are the same thing. Like, makeup makes you happier if you are already a happy person, or more confident if you are already a more confident person. Clothes make you more confident if you are already a confident person. Same thing. Fat loss and muscle gain, getting your body in the shape that you want will make you a better, happier, healthier, or whatever, more confident person, right?
Yeah.
If you are already those things.
Yeah. If you already appreciate your body for what it is.
Otherwise, it won't. I've also actually been there before. My wake-up call really was when I got to my goal weight. Mm-hmm. I even, to be quite honest, got to my goal look, honestly. I was pretty thin.
Yeah.
And I did not, I felt like for 5 seconds I felt really good, right? But then immediately it just went away. And I'm just like, wait, I still am not happy.
Yeah.
I still don't like the way I look, even though on paper all of the numbers were, these were my goal numbers.
Yeah.
But I still didn't like the way I looked. And people were congratulating me on how much weight I've lost, and, which is great. But I was just not happy. And that felt so much worse, to be quite honest, then all the times I was overweight and not happy about it, because at least I knew I had somewhere to go. I'm like, okay, I'm overweight, I'm not happy, but once I reach my goal weight, I'll be happy, right? So I had hope. Once I reached my goal weight, I was not happy. I'm like, what now? What is going on here? And that's when I started to expand my horizons and start looking at, everybody's stuff, not just the narrow focus that I was already going down. And I mean, it's just totally true.
Yeah. If you're on any forum, like I was on the in some Facebook groups, and occasionally there would be a post where the person would be like, "Hey, I'm actually thin now, but I still feel not good about myself."
Yeah.
There's like always these kinds of posts, and they don't get a lot of responses, but but you can see that, like, I think there's a lot of proof out there if you just look and if you just listen.
Yeah.
And this is why, like, I think figuring out your why, like, why are you actually doing this, and it needs to come from a place of self-compassion and kindness, which is easier said than done.
Yeah. I would say self-compassion, self-acceptance too.
Yeah.
Like, accept what is real as well.
Right.
You have to accept that in order to change, you have to accept, in order to make your reality better, you have to accept the current reality as it is.
Yes.
Yeah. There's this guy called Nathaniel Brandon who I've been listening to. I think he passed away a few years ago, but he's really good at talking about taking self-responsibility and having self-acceptance. It's all about self-efficacy with that guy, which really resonates with me.
What is self-efficacy?
It's the confidence and ability to change your own future, kind of thing. Like figuring out what you have control over and then doing it.
Right.
If you're a self-efficacious person, then you basically won't get overwhelmed by outside stuff, because you always have your own locus of control, and you are aware of what your locus of control is.
Yeah.
So it's So I don't know. I guess I would maybe recommend his stuff, but I haven't really delved deep into it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we can swing too far in one category to the other. Like, there's the part where, like, I want to be in control, right? And then there's the part where, like, honestly, you can't be in control.
Yes.
Of a lot of stuff.
And that's the acceptance part.
And that's the
You got
acceptance.
acceptance. You have to actually accept what you can and can't control.
And I think that is something that I personally am still learning, because I definitely tend to default into the I'm going to control things, right, category. And then
in certain areas of your life.
In certain areas. Yeah. But then, like, I think this like, especially, so I've had like these I don't think I'm a hypochondriac, because like I do get assuaged and feel reassured if I get a test done and it comes out negative. So I don't think I'm a hypochondriac in that sense, but I do definitely have this sense of fear that something is going to go wrong and I'm not going to be able to do anything about it, or I should have done something and I didn't do it. I think that's really my biggest fear. And as I was telling Lucy, I think a few nights ago, I think it came from the part where I only had finite goals, right? Like, I think initially when I first, I remember being like, oh, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to be happy. If you're living in that kind of cycle, you're kind of always in an anxious kind of state, because you're always just waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
Right? And then over time, I read this book by the Mind Valley founder, The Code of Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhani. And in it, he talks about, he has 4 quadrants, and there's the one quadrant, which is where you have a very big goal that you're working towards, but you're also really enjoying the process. And he calls it bending reality. And I was like, oh, that quadrant is where I want to be in. And I just realized I'm always in the anxious quadrant. Which is the one where you have a goal and you're just waiting for that goal to happen. You're not enjoying the process. You're just like really focused on the end goal, right? So I was like, oh, I'm always in this quadrant. I don't want to be in this quadrant. I'm going to be in the bending reality quadrant.
Yeah.
And then I started being like, okay, I'm going to enjoy the process. And this was like maybe 3-4 years ago. And then like I actually started accepting more and more of the process. So even with our business or anything else, like even if like we're not paying ourselves right now or anything, but like I know we'll get to that point. And I really enjoy like how I spend my day each and every day, right? So I'm really enjoying the process, and I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure we're going to get to a point where we'll be able to pay ourselves with this thing.
Yeah.
But then the human mind then starts thinking, then what?
Yes.
Like if I don't have problems to solve in this world, what is the point of living? Like it goes down that rabbit hole.
Richard goes through like an existential, like a midlife crisis, like every
5 years or
yeah.
something. Yeah. I don't know what's up with that. But yes, every 5 to 7 years, I have a crisis of some sort. And then I was like, okay, then what?
I was going to say every year, but
every year. Okay. No, that's too soon. Okay. Yeah. So, and then I was like, and then I realized, I have no infinite goals. All I have is I'm going to reach this goal and then keep going. And that's where a lot of my health anxieties were coming from. Because I made up problems.
Yeah.
Because that is the one thing I truly cannot control. Right? Like if a plane crashes or if like I get some kind of disease like that, there's not much I can do about it other than like rely on doctors to fix it.
Yeah.
Right? And I know doctors can't fix everything. Ergo, this is a perpetual problem, but not of a good kind.
Yeah.
So, but then once I recognized that, I had to create an infinite goal for myself, which for me is trying to live every day to the fullest, which I know I am bad at times because I tend to be someone who gets into flow with things very easily. And when you're in flow, it's a great state to be in, but that does mean you're kind of disconnected from everything that is happening around you, right? You're not, like really observing what's going on around you and enjoying the people and enjoying nature and things like that. Yeah. And I'm like, that is an infinite goal because you can never achieve it.
Yeah.
Every day it restarts. Mm-hmm. You were about to say something.
Oh, yeah. There's a time for flow, and then there's the time for consciousness.
Yes.
Right? And you want to just have that consciousness also built in.
Yes. Yeah. Which is something that I struggle with. I know that for sure. And it is something that you any human struggles with every day.
Yeah.
So it's a very great infinite goal. And once I accepted that, I suddenly started my health anxieties went down.
Yeah.
It was all just psychological because I didn't have a problem. I created one at the time. But, I still struggle with it because I still sometimes have those thoughts because I'm still working on it. But this is an example of where, like, especially in the Western world, we really want to feel like we want to control everything, right? And that's where happiness comes from. And then, but there's also, yes, you should have finite goals, but then also knowing when you have to surrender.
Yeah.
And being detached from it. And I think that's really hard to do. And I think that's something that a lot of our very successful clients have done really well, where they are really focused on the process and they're not as attached and they're kind of surrendered to whatever will happen to their outcomes.
Yeah. Invested but not attached to it.
Yes.
Kind of maybe do
yes.
you feel those words are accurate?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. I'm invested in the action, the process or the outcomes.
Yeah.
But I'm not attached to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's an excellent state to be in. And I think that is a good ending to this episode.
Yeah, I think we got a little philosophical this time around. Yeah.
Last time we were technical, this time we got philosophical.
Let us know what topics you particularly like or don't like. I feel like these past 3 episodes have been pretty different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would really be interested to know what people actually enjoy to, hash more out about.
Yes. Topics you don't like when you don't enjoy as much, or topics you really enjoy when we talk about. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye. Hey there. If you want to know when the next episode drops, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and also hit that bell icon. Until then, keep crushing it.